Hello and welcome once again to In Depth, where we look at the big stories of our times. Today our focus on Sino-Indian tensions that have built up at the border, but we're not looking so much at the military standoff, but at its economic repercussions. Remember, as tensions heightened between the two countries over the Galwan face-off, the bigger question is being raised also at one level over the manner in which India and China have fashioned their economic ties. At the end of financial year 2020, China accounted for 10% of India's trade, and 30% of a trade deficit is what we have with the Chinese. So amidst all these calls for an economic and trade boycott with China, the big question comes, can India really afford it? Is it really realistic? Let's start, therefore, in depth with a report on India and China's evolving trade ties.
The rapid expansion of India-China bilateral trade since the beginning of this century propelled China to emerge as India's largest goods trading partner by 2008, a position that China continues to hold even today. Together, China and Hong Kong are India's biggest trading partners, with China alone accounting for 10% of India's overall trade. In 2019, the India-China bilateral trade touched a historic high of $95.54 billion, raising hopes that this year the trade could cross the $100 billion mark. Chinese investment in the Indian startups also rose 94% in 2019. In 2018, China had invested 15,000 crores in India, which rose to 29,000 crore rupees in 2019. Out of the 30 big startups, around 18 startups have got Chinese investment. These include brands like Paytm, Ola, Oyo, Snapdeal and Byju's. But the equation is slowly changing with the gradually growing cold vibes between the two nations. The financial year began with India tightening its FDI norms, a move said to be aimed at protecting ailing Indian businesses from Chinese takeovers. However, Chinese companies continued to win bids for infrastructural projects within the country.
Two Chinese projects are in the spotlight where the government is under pressure to scrap these projects. The first one is the 5.5 kilometer stretch of Delhi-Meerut rapid transit system, where Shanghai Tunnel Engineering Company has won the lowest bid of 1126 crore. The second lowest bid is by L&T, which is just about 44 crores higher. The second project is by SUV maker Great Wall Motors, which has planned to invest $1 billion in its plant in Talegaon in Maharashtra. And both the state government as well as the centre are under pressure to scrap these two projects.
The government on Wednesday issued a statement on the Delhi-Meerut RRTS. The statement said that financial bids had been opened, but the tender was not finalized, an indication from the government that the Chinese company has yet to be given the contract. With the standoff at Galwan, things could change. That is, if India wants to try and twist China's economic arm. In FY20, China accounted for 5.3% of India's exports, but a much higher 14% of imports. According to India Today sources, various ministries are now looking for options to work out measures to strengthen India's economic might, to stonewall China and its business interests within the country.
At the core of China's economic expansionism and geopolitical strategy in the 21st century is the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI, Beijing's grand plan to commercially link up more than half the world's population under China's stewardship, a massive network of land and sea routes. The BRI also passes through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, and India, not having agreed to join in, stands wary of Chinese geopolitical intentions. But what really does China hope to achieve from the BRI or the One Belt, One Road OBOR project? Take a look.
Previously called the One Belt, One Road, the BRI has two distinct components. The overland economic belt that has 6 trade corridors and a maritime Silk Route with a string of seaports spreading from the South China Sea right till Africa. While China claims over 60 countries are on board, China's neighbor and another Asian giant, India, stands opposed to Beijing's move to project itself as a superpower.
हम ऐसे नए कनेक्टिविटी प्रोजेक्ट का स्वागत करते हैं जो समावेशी, सस्टेनेबल और पारदर्शी हो और जो देशों की संप्रभुता और क्षेत्रीय अखंडता का सम्मान करे.
India's biggest concern lies in the BRI's flagship project, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC. In April 2017, a port in the small fishing town of Gwadar on the southwestern coast of Pakistan's Balochistan was leased to China for 40 years. Gwadar is where the economic belt will meet the maritime Silk Road of the BRI. A $62 billion project, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor aims to link Kashgar in the landlocked western Chinese region of Xinjiang to the Arabian Sea 3,000 kilometers away via the Gwadar seaport. India's main objection is that the CPEC passes through Indian territory illegally occupied by Pakistan. The Kashgar-Gwadar corridor passes through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. A series of highways, railways and energy projects passing through the disputed land between India and Pakistan are in the pipeline. In September 2018, New Delhi raised the issue of CPEC violating India's territorial integrity at the 39th session of the United Nations Human Rights Council.
The question then is, can India really stand up to China when it comes to trade and the economy? I'm joined by Dr. Sanjaya Baru, Distinguished Fellow at Institute for Defence Studies and Analysis. Appreciate your joining us, Dr. Baru. Are we being unrealistic when we talk about boycotting Chinese goods, about cutting trade ties? Are we deluding ourselves from the reality that exists on the ground where China remains our biggest trade partner?
I don't think, first of all, we are both members of the WTO and we have a certain multilateral framework within which we do trade. I don't see the government of India officially boycotting China or officially prohibiting trade with China, though the WTO provides under considerations of national security. For example, Pakistan uses that to ban trade with India. I do not actually see the government of India banning trade. But you know, Rajdeep, the sentiment in this country has now become so negative on China that this momentum of consumers boycotting Chinese goods, I see that gathering momentum. There are certain countries which are still dependent on China. It will take time for them to transit out of their dependence. The two most important are in electronics, goods and pharmaceuticals, APIs. But I think the government, the recent policy decisions of the Prime Minister, what he called Atmanirbharta, in my judgment, focus of Atmanirbharta was China, to reduce India's dependence in these two or three critical sectors.
Yes.
There are areas where they continue to import from China, and I don't think the Chinese will stop exporting to India if we go and buy semiconductors or whatever.
But You know,
what
but
the Chinese have to worry.
is this, sorry to interrupt, is this simply populist rhetoric? When the Prime Minister talks of Atmanirbharta and you believe that it's in some way directed at China, the fact is the Chinese have just won a major tunnel contract, output actually L&T. You've got the Maharashtra government signing an MOU with GW Motors. So you've got numerous examples where on the ground, the fact is that the Chinese technology companies, the Chinese manufacturing companies are coming into India. Can you stop that? Can you actually, can the government unofficially or officially stop that in any way?
No, first of all of this dependence is recent. It is not populist rhetoric. It is the enunciation of a new policy. Our dependence on economic links with China, I don't want to use the word dependence because these are all conscious decisions that Indian companies and Indian governments have taken to reach out to China. After all, Mr. Modi, as Chief Minister of Gujarat, visited China more than anybody else. As like Chandrababu Naidu, there are a lot of chief ministers going to China, wanting to build relationships. And the Manmohan Singh government encouraged them. Our attitude then was that a strong economic relationship would improve relations with China. But if we see that that is not contributing to an increased trust and increased better relationship, there would be a rethink on all of that. And Indian companies can easily switch away from Chinese contracts to other contracts. There's Malaysia, there's Indonesia, there's Vietnam, there are other countries, there's Taiwan. Other countries are there that can step in. But the whole India-China economic relationship is actually about just 20 years old.
Sure it is.
The turn of the century.
Sure it is, but it's an extreme. Sure it is, Dr. Baru, but it's also a very skewed relationship. As you wrote in a piece earlier this year, the fact is China's gross domestic per capita gross domestic product has crossed $10,000. So the Chinese have simply outgrown us in a way. We are talking about a 5 trillion economy versus a massive economy on the other side. So is that part of the problem, that the relationship is so skewed? So even if today we were to take on the Chinese or draw some red lines, it might not hurt Beijing's military strategic objectives.
No, I don't think it'll hurt their military strategic objectives, but it will certainly hurt their standing, not just in India, across the world. There's so much focus on Galwan and what is happening between India and China. Look at what is happening across Asia. The Chinese are putting pressure on Japan. The Chinese are putting pressure on Vietnam, on Taiwan, on Indonesia. Across the board, there is an increasing Chinese assertiveness, and which is precisely why countries are coming together. I mean, Australia, which was in the Chinese pocket. I mean, I don't know if you've seen this television serial called Secret City, which shows the Australian defense minister having an affair with the wife of the Chinese ambassador in Canberra. That was the kind of relationship that China and Australia had 10 years or 5 years back. But the same Australia is today under pressure. The Chinese are banning import of beef, banning import of wine. So many countries are being affected by China's assertiveness. And I think India will have a lot of other countries joining it in resisting this kind of assertiveness.
So are you saying, therefore, create an alternative regional cooperation? Remember, we backed out of RCEP last year. We didn't go ahead with the regional cooperation there, which some thought was a bad idea. But do you believe the Quad, for example, tying up with Australia and other like-minded countries is perhaps the way forward, rather than sort of overtly challenge China, create alternative regional groupings?
Yes, and we must engage even in RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. I was a critic of the government's decision. Just because we are at the receiving end doesn't mean we negotiate. I don't think we should have walked out of the negotiations. Even now, the Japanese are asking us to re-enter those negotiations. ASEAN wants us to re-enter those negotiations. There's nothing wrong in being part of the negotiations. And if the final outcome doesn't suit us, then we can take a decision, because the negotiations are not yet over. So I would actually say that we should be part of all these negotiations, but make our position very clear and certainly pursue parallel tracks with ASEAN, with Australia, with Japan, and even with Taiwan. I mean, Taiwan is an important business partner for India.
One final question on OBOR. This one belt, one road, which is seen as China's most ambitious project. Do you believe the Chinese purely see it in economic terms, or this is a geostrategic project on the part on China's part to, in a way, strengthen its hold in the neighborhood and across the world? And how should India respond?
Well, I think the consensus on OBOR is that it is a geopolitical initiative. In fact, the word I would use is it's a geo-economic initiative. it's an economic initiative with geopolitical consequences. It's certainly meant to create networks across Central Asia, across Eurasia, and that has been the focus, and also in the Indian Ocean region. There are two views, in fact, in India on our participation aboard. One which says that because it's geopolitical, we want more transparency. The other which says that these are opportunities for Indian businesses,
Sure.
and if those opportunities are available, we should participate. Right now, the Indian position of waiting and watching and seeking clarifications on our board is probably the right one. And certainly with what has happened in the last 24 hours, I don't think, for some time to come, we will talk about, really partnerships of this sort. The Chinese have broken trust. It's an extremely, what they did in the last 24 hours in Galwan, I think was a huge setback to the bilateral relationship. And it will require a lot of diplomatic effort on their part to, once again, engage India, whether diplomatically or through economic cooperation.
Dr. Sanjaya Baru, you've given us a sense of what you believe is the road ahead for India as it deals with China, particularly when it comes to the economy. Thanks very much, Dr. Baru, for joining me here on In Depth. Let's take a break. When we return, we'll tell you about the Boycott China movement that's taking social media by storm, and some have hit the streets. Escalating tensions on the border between India and China, we are focusing on the economic dimensions of this relationship. Now, many Indians are increasingly urging the government to impose some kind of economic sanctions on Chinese companies, prevent them from entering the Indian market, prohibit their access to India's large consumer base. But how feasible is it really with these economic boycott campaigns that are being launched? Watch this report and find out whether this Boycott China campaign is gathering momentum or not. Take a look.
Boycott Chinese products. That's the top trend in India. Educator and innovator Sonam Wangchuk created massive buzz online after calling for a complete rejection of Chinese goods.
अब हमें जवाब देना होगा और जवाब हमें अपने हाथों में लेके वॉलेट पावर से देना होगा और ये कोई गलत या बुरी बात भी नहीं है। सैंक्शंस सदा प्रयोग किए जाते हैं जब भी कोई गलत करता है, वो चाहे देश हो। उत्तरी कोरिया पर सैंक्शंस लगाते हैं देश, तो हम क्या अपने पर्सनल इकोनॉमिक सैंक्शंस नहीं लगा सकते इन देशों पर? और बॉयकॉट करना कोई नई बात भी नहीं है। आपने सुना होगा स्वदेशी मूवमेंट, बॉयकॉट मूवमेंट तिलक जी के नेतृत्व में 1905 से शुरू हुई थी ब्रिटिश सरकार के खिलाफ बॉयकॉट का।
Wangchuk's Boycott China call went viral, with several celebrities joining the chorus.
People who endorses this, celebrities, they endorses Chinese products. They are doing it for money. At least they don't have to endorse and advertise it. And then, consumers who are their fans, will look at their, Bollywood or whatever idol. And then they say, oh, if my idol is saying this, then maybe I should go and buy it. So it's the celebrities, I think, if they start with not endorsing it for money, then it will lead somewhere.
A big Chinese presence in India is in form of TikTok, which has more than 200 million subscribers and has overtaken YouTube in the Indian market. As India-China border tensions escalated, TikTok took off this video of comic Saloni Gaur.
बाबा ये चाइना कैसे नहीं मान रहा है? नहीं मतलब चुपचाप लिए जा रहे हैं तो कुछ भी भेजे जा रही है। पहले अपना अजीनोमोटो वाला खाना बेच के हमारी आते खराब कराई, फिर सस्ता फोन और टिकटॉक बेच के हमारा यूथ बर्बाद कर दिया, फिर ये कोरोना बेच के पूरा देश बंद करा दिया और अब सब धीरे धीरे सही हो ही रहा तो इन्हें हमारी जमीन चाहिए।
But reinstated it after outrage. Saloni now says she won't be going back to the Chinese social media platform.
I think I'll not be putting any content there now. I think I won't be using it because, when I saw that Sonam Wangchuk's video, he was correct. I totally agree with him that we should, reduce our dependency on all of these Chinese products. Slowly, we can move towards that because there is no harm in being a little self-reliant.
But is boycotting everything made in China possible? From electronics to pharma, most Indian industries rely on raw material coming from China.
Let's look at, though, the fact is that most countries in the world depend on China to source their raw materials for goods manufactured for different sectors. That's been the propelling factor for China's rise across the world. A lot of the raw material does come from China. Let's then try and understand why and how China dominates the world and has a competitive advantage over several other countries.
Consumer goods, healthcare, defense. All these sectors and more depend on a vital raw material called rare earths. A group of 17 elements prized for their unique magnetic and electrochemical properties. And China is by far the largest producer of these critical deposits. Because of its low labor costs, less stringent environmental regulations, the country controls 90% of their global output. And that gives Beijing a huge advantage over the other rare earth producing nations like the US, Australia, Russia, Vietnam, South Africa, and even India. Engaged on multiple fronts, diplomatically and militarily, Beijing may use its monopoly over these deposits as a strategic asset. It used this rare muscle before, blocking mineral exports to Japan in 2010 over a territorial dispute. China warned the United States with the same action just last year as the trade war escalated. Strategic experts realize the impact of future Chinese curbs.
A lot of us would just shirk this off because we get all our technology from China anyway. But if they reduce their output of stockpiles to us, we can't develop our technologies. Our defense systems suffer.
With a pandemic and China's newfound aggression, India needs to focus on this missing ingredient in its economic and geopolitical game plan.
India, though, has started this rare earth production way back in 1950s. However, we have remained mostly on the downstream developments, whereas the upstream process and all those which are more tech heavy and require more and more higher investments, they have not been done in India.
For now, India is also working with Japan on a rare earth joint venture in Visakhapatnam. The government is rolling out a new national mineral policy, but China has been way ahead of the curve in the rare earth sector.
In running the Chinese economy, the first priority is a case of social harmony, creating jobs so that they keep everybody under control and happy, there's no uprising. So that's why there's a big focus on rare earths, because there's a great opportunity for them to create high value-add jobs and major employment, and rare earths can become the basis of a high technology manufacturing industry.
A lesson to learn from China to achieve an Atmanirbhar Bharat in rare earth minerals, products and global supply chains. With Ankit Kumar, Bureau Report, India Today.
That's it on this in-depth special. Thanks for watching. Stay well, stay safe.
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.